recording. Okay, and then hello everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is our second wildfire webinar of the year. We hold one webinar a quarter. These programs are funded by CalFire through a grant given to the Ventura County Resource Conservation District. Also, our acronym is VCRCD because that's a really long name. I'm the organizer for this webinar. My name's Heidi Ortloff. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator for the VCRCD. Last quarter, the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council gave a presentation on home hardening and their FireWise community program. And through that Q&A, that really went over time, but a lot of questions were coming in through the Q&A about these fire maps people were looking at and if there were changes happening and what that meant for homes that, you know, we're just trying to make sense of what they needed to know now. So because of all that interest, I reached out to the Ventura County Fire Department to see if they had someone who was willing to talk to us today about fire hazard severity zone maps. And fortunately, Mike Worford, am I saying that correctly, Mike?
Yeah, Worford.
Worford. Okay, I like overcomplicated it.
Yeah, no worries.
Fortunately, Mike here, he graciously accepted my invitation and agreed to talk to you guys today. And he'll be available to answer some of your guys' questions. We're so happy to have you here, Mike. And if you're ready, you can get started and I'll monitor the chat and continue to let people in.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll keep it as simple as possible. So real quick, my name is Mike Worford. I am the Assistant Fire Marshal that oversees our Community Wildfire Preparedness Division. So that's one of the divisions out of the Fire Prevention Bureau. So we oversee the countywide defensible space program. We oversee home hardening, education, and outreach. We also oversee landscape plan approvals, which we can get into a little later. That's for like all the new structures being built now that are in high or very high fire hazard severity zones are required to submit landscape plans to us. And they have to follow the zone zero requirements and all the really strict landscape laws that are out there now for new construction. Also, we deal with vegetation complaints and everything vegetation wildfire related. So I've been with the department 24 years. Just recently, my boss, Larry Williams, I don't know, some of you may know him. He was with the department for 36 years, oversaw this division for the last, I don't know, 12 years of his career. And so
Oh, so you replaced Larry?
yeah, he retired 2 months ago on April 18th. And so
yeah, I saw pictures of like his going away
yeah.
party.
Yeah, so he was very instrumental, not only locally, but at the state level, with developing a lot of these laws and things that are coming into place now. And so I've taken over from there, and we're you know, in lieu of all the recent fires and everything, a lot of stuff is coming down the pipeline, wildfire related. So it's there's some stuff out there. So we'll keep the presentation pretty brief, just going over what how these maps came about and all that kind of stuff, and then we can open it up to questions. Okay, so let me see. I'll share my screen. I have like a PowerPoint that we'll kind of go off of, and then you know, we'll go over questions after that. So let me see if I can get that going right now.
You should be able to. I think I have no restrictions, but if you run into that, let me know and I'll go back through.
Okay, hang on one second here. So share the screen. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to share that. Can you see that right now?
It's in the process. It's just, yeah, now I see it.
Okay. Let me do one more thing here, and then hang on one second. Okay, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so here we go. So we already did the introduction. So the maps. So fire hazard severity zone maps arose out of the fires we had in the late 90s, early 2000s. After that round of fires, the state fire marshal was tasked with developing these maps, prompting recognition of these areas and strategies to reduce wildfire risks. Legislation response led to mandated mapping across California under the California Public Resource Code, encompassing all the state responsibility areas. So the map covers two different areas. There's the SRA, the state responsibility area, which is usually the unincorporated areas around the major cities. Those are usually state responsibility areas or county areas. And then there's the LRA, the local response area, which is most of the incorporated cities. So in the early 2000s, in the original round of maps that they developed, they did the SRA first, and it had three different zones. They designated very high, high, and moderate. These zones designate areas where defensible space and home hardening building codes apply. So what they were trying to do, think of the maps kind of like flood maps, flood zone maps. They're trying to map the hazard, not the risk. So it was originally intended for local jurisdictions, such as all our city building and safety departments and the fire departments, help us by using these maps where we can identify high fire hazard areas, and then we can apply the associated high building standard requirements, where if you're in one of these high fire areas, then you have to build your homes to a little bit higher standard. So think about Class A roofs, dual pane windows, boxed eaves, that kind of thing.
Mike, just because I think it's timely, two people are asking if you're willing to share this PowerPoint afterwards, or if they should be trying to take down the notes of everything you're saying.
Yeah, I can do that. Or also CalFire has a really awesome website just dedicated to the fire hazard severity zone maps. If you Google fire hazard severity zone maps, it'll take you to CalFire's page where it's specifically dedicated to this. It goes all through the history. It has a FAQ page. It's like a one-stop shop. It's really the go-to place. So whatever works.
I'll put what I think is that in the chat, you guys, once I pull it up. And so hopefully that'll be a good guide for you all.
Hang on, I texted you before. That was your phone number, right? That I texted. Oh, I think I put the wrong area code in. Let me try to text it to you.
I was gonna say, oh, I don't think you texted
That's why you
me.
didn't respond. So let me text this web page to you real quick. Your number was in the
My
email, and
signature. Yeah.
then you'll have the link. Okay, it's not playing nice right now. I'll send it out after we're done here. We can send that out. I'll make a note.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, there's three zones in the actual maps, which I already went over: the moderate, high, and the very high. And different things are triggered at each level. So that was the first round in like the mid 2000s that came out. And then from 2007 forward, we've had a whole new wave of fires and things that have happened. And so they felt the need that we needed to update these maps, right? And account for the latest fire history, So the maps take into consideration fire history, topography, and climate. So with the latest round of fire history, they updated those maps earlier this year.
Could you, not to throw you off, Mike, but I've run into this at work as well, trying to explain the differences between the map shows, what was your wording? The hazard, not the risk, or something like that.
Right. So it's just based on the land itself, the topography, the type of fuel on the land. Is it, mainly brush? Is it timber? Is it oak trees, what we call oak woodland? And that's what we're mapping. So if you were to take a house and build it there, is that considered a high fire area based on the known fire history, the type of fuel, and the topography? That's all we're looking at. So that's the hazard, right? So once you decide, hey, I want to build a house there, now that becomes the risk. So what is the risk associated to that if I build a house there? If I'm building a brand new house, I'm building it to the highest standard out there regarding wildfires, right? With the Class A roofs, all that stuff I talked about. And then now the laws are coming around as well and looking at the landscaping. So that's the associated risk. What is the probability that the house is going to burn down in that area? The insurance companies use all different kinds of assessments to when they're writing policies and deciding if they're going to carry a person or not based on where they're located. So there's other software programs and things out there way beyond just our maps that they use as well. There's fire modeling software where they can it's like almost like AI. They can put in components like, it's summer, 100 degrees, humidity's 20%. We have winds coming out of the northeast at 20 miles an hour, and the computer program will run a computer model of how far they think that fire will go. So all kinds of different programs are available. So I know there's a lot of misconception that the insurance companies are using these maps solely as a tool to drop people or decide if they want to keep them as policyholders. And there's way more to it than just our maps. But that wasn't the original intention of the maps. It was solely to be used as a planning tool, like I said earlier, for local building departments and local fire departments as they determine what kind of requirements they're going to impose on folks that want to build new properties within these areas. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Okay, so this next slide, fire behavior. So the basic, just real quick, with our defensible space programs and everything, our 100-foot minimum brush clearance, that the intent of the 100-foot brush clearance is to protect homes from radiant heat exposure. So think of yourself at a campfire, you're standing around a campfire and you feel the heat coming off that's radiant heat. So 100 feet has been proven to be effective in keeping homes from burning from radiant heat exposure alone. So that's how they came up with 100-foot. They don't want to go beyond 100-foot because there really isn't any science saying, 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet is any better. What we're trying to protect after 100 feet is we're trying to protect homes from embers. And as we know, embers can fly. Last November when we had the mountain fire in Camarillo, it started out originally in that Somis area, and then it jumped a good 2 miles and got established in the Camarillo Heights area. So how do we protect homes from embers landing all over the place? So that's some of the science and some of the thinking about where the landscape laws have gone from there, as far as zone 0 requirements and all the new legislation coming out regarding that. So Yeah, in between that time I was talking about when the original maps came out in '07, we've had plenty of big fires here on the home front as well. Starting, I don't know if some of you remember the Springs fire back in 2013. That was a early season fire that started in May down at the base of the Camarillo grade, Camarillo Springs area. Hence, that's why they named it. And it ended up burning all the way to the ocean over there by Point Magoo. Again, early fire, May. We don't expect that kind of fire behavior or that type of acreage typically that early in the season. But as we've come to know over the last decade or so, there isn't a fire season, so to speak, anymore. It's year round. So again, we saw that. We had Thomas Fire at the time in 2017. At the end of 2017, that was the largest fire in California history. Now, when you look at that list, the Thomas Fire is actually number 9. Then we had the Woolsey Fire the following year, another huge fire, and then most recently the Mountain Fire just this last November, where we lost about 200 homes up in the Somas and Camarillo Heights area. So let's see here. LRI map adoption process. So this is what happened most recently. This wasn't, I know it was on the heels of the Mountain, the Palisades, and the Eaton, but this was already going to happen regardless of those fires or not. So because of all of that fire history and the need for an update, the LRA, that's the local response area again, which is the incorporated cities, was only previously mapped in the very high area. So they found the need that they needed to map those additional zones, the high and the moderate, because of all of this fire behavior that we've had over the last 10, 20 years since the original maps. And so that's how this came about. So the fire district, we are the local agency defined in the government code section. We provide the fire protection services to all the unincorporated areas, the incorporated areas of Camarillo, Moore Park, Ojai, Port Hueneme, Santa Paula, Simi Valley, and Thousand Oaks. So that government code section required the fire district to review and adopt the state fire marshal's recommended LRA fire hazard severity zone maps within the area that we serve as the fire district. Additionally, that government code section does not allow us to reduce the zones, only to add to them. So we did review those maps in early March, and we did not add any additional zones. We just took the maps as they were from CalFire. We didn't add any additional to it. And then we just went over what, the law required the additional zones in the LRA. So the LRA map adoption process. So the maps were released on March 10th. There was a board of supervisors meeting at the county government center where these were originally unveiled. And then Ventura County Fire Department we've been providing many town halls and community meetings at all the local cities regarding the adoption process. That adoption process, it has to happen within 120 days of March 10th. On May 13th, we presented to the Board of Supervisors again and adopted the maps formally into our new ordinance, Ordinance 33. May 20th, another public hearing was scheduled, and the ordinance officially went through. So all the legal work and adoption process has taken place, and those new LRA maps will become effective next week on July 1st. So this is probably what most of you are wanting to see, are what are the minimum requirements in all these areas. And this sheet is available on that website that CalFire has dedicated to the fire hazard severity zone maps. So we'll get that link out to you. So let's go over in the SRA, that's the state responsibility area. Defensible space standards, 100-foot brush clearance, that's required in all the zones. So the moderate, high, and very high. If you're building a new home in one of these in the SRA, high or very high, the new fire building requirements will be required. The new landscape requirements, zone 0 will be required. That means you have to submit plans to the fire department. We formally approve them, and it's very strict guidelines as far as what you can place around your home in the 100-foot zone. Ventura County went a little more restrictive than the state, and we adopted a completely non-combustible zone 0, which means if you were to measure 5 feet out around the exterior walls of your home, we're not allowing any vegetation in that 5-foot area. You have to start your plantings beyond the 5 foot, and then they have to be spaced. So the reason for that is they've found over and over in the last 10 years that the most vulnerable area to embers. So again, we're not protecting homes from the fire front. We're trying to protect homes from the ember shower that can blow a mile, 2 miles ahead of the fire front. So imagine it's just raining embers down on your house and all the little areas where those might be receptive to ignition. So most people have planter beds within that 5-foot area, hedges, things like that. So what we are finding is the embers get down into the wood chips. They start creeping around and smoldering in there. They build up enough heat, and then they transmit fire into the vegetation, the hedges, whatever. And then you've got flames right up against the side of the structure. So that's some of the thinking of what they're trying to prevent and reduce, because the problem is we just don't have enough fire trucks to put on everybody's driveway. So we have to find a way for some of these homes to be able to stand on their own. And so the thinking is that's going to be your best bet. Looking through some of these requirements as well in the SRA, if you're selling your home in the high or very high zones, your realtor is required to get a wildfire disclosure report from the fire department. So all that means is we come out and we do an inspection of the outside of your home, and we're just looking. Right now, we're not looking for zone 0 and all that other stuff. All we're really looking at is if you have trees overhanging the roof, we're going to make you cut the branches back 3 feet at a minimum. And if you have vegetation like ivy or anything attached to the structure, we're probably going to have you remove that. And then other than that, we're kind of more hands-off and just providing a report saying that a lot of new legislation is coming down on existing homes over the next 3 years, and that that could further impact what kind of landscaping's in your yard right now. On the LRA side, similar, it's similar things are going on. So if you're building a home, the high fire building requirements, roof, windows, boxed eaves, all of that are going to be required in high and very high. The real estate disclosures are required in high and very high. And right now, only the defensible space standards only apply to the very high in the LRA. So to piggyback on that, the state board, after Palisades and Eaton, Governor Newsom tasked the State Board of Forestry with finalizing what those defensible space requirements are going to be. So we don't have clear direction on that yet. And what we're being told is once they finalize those requirements, the law, if everything goes as planned, will go into effect January 1st, 2026, and that will start a 3-year window. So till January 1st, 2029, where folks in these existing homes in these high fire areas will have 3 years in order to comply with whatever the State Board of Forestry comes down with. It's going to be similar to what we're already applying for new homes being built. But there could be some some differences. Like, I think they're going to be a little more reasonable if you have, a tree and the trunk is within 5 feet of the structure. We don't think they're going to have you cut the tree down necessarily. What they're probably going to do, what we're hearing, is they're going to have you limb the branches up off the roof at least a minimum of 5 feet. So like imagine a bubble 5 feet above the roof if you have a tree that massively overhangs, and then 5 feet to the sides and to the eaves. We don't want branches touching the actual roof or the eaves. And then there's nothing really they have the moderate zone mapped right now. But there isn't anything going on in the moderate zone yet in the LRA. In the SRA, the Chapter 7A requirements are applicable and defensible space is applicable. So this little map here, if you will, that has all the minimum requirements on it is pretty helpful. But that's the main thing to remember, is there are very strict guidelines in play right now for building a brand new home or structure. What they're going to do to the existing homes that have been there forever with existing landscape in these fire hazard severity zones is to be determined. So we'll have more insight by the end of this year. And then, like I said, there's going to be a 3-year window in order to comply. So we're trying to educate folks as best we can. We partnered with the fire safe councils to help get the word out. And there's going to be a massive public education campaign over the later part of this year and over the next year or two leading up to this, so that we can get folks up to speed and in the know. And it's not going to be just, the law goes into effect and, you must do it now. There's going to be some time to get into compliance. So let's see, what's the next? This slide is just showing with these new maps that came out, we have 108% increase of mapped areas within the county. It's our county, I mean, California as a whole, we know is fire prone, and we get massive fires throughout the state of California, and Ventura County is no exception. We have a history of massive fires that roll through here. We have a history of the Santa Ana winds being a problem, and we've seen that over the last couple of years, and specifically within the last 6 months with what just happened. So I think this QR code takes you straight to the fire hazard severity zone viewer. So if you want to QR code that, I'll leave this up for a second so you can. Additionally, you can visit the Ventura County Fire Department webpage at vcfd.org. And on the top right-hand side, there's a fire prevention tab, and under that you'll see fire hazard severity zones. We have a whole page dedicated to this that kind of tells you a lot of the information that I brought forward today. And let me see, I think that's about it. Let me see what this slide is. This just goes over more of the process of how we adopted the ordinance. We had to adopt the ordinance per the California government code. We had no choice, and we could not reduce it. We could only, add more areas, which we did not do. We just took the map from the state as is. And that's it. So again, if you have more questions, you can reach me directly at this website, or at this email address. And we monitor this email, and this is our phone number. You can leave us a message. Also, this QR code, you can publicly comment on what your thoughts are on this whole map process and everything involved with it. So that is the end of the PowerPoint. At this point, if you guys have questions, feel free to fire away, and I'll do my best to get you an answer.
Yeah, you guys can I mean, some people are fine just unmuting themselves. If you want to be called on, you can raise your hand. So we have a couple questions in the chat.
Okay.
Let me see. Um, and this might just be your personal opinion. Do you think insurance companies will standardize what they are using to determine whether to insure a property or not at some point?
So I do know the California Department of Insurance, since I mean the insurance thing has been out of control the last couple of years, and so they opened up. I know they expanded the way they do their underwriting as of this year. So it's not as restrictive as it was in 2024 or the years prior. They realize there's a problem in the state with insurance, and there's way too many. For those of you that don't know, if you can't get insurance, they offer what's called the California Fair Plan, which is like a stopgap. It's like the last resort. You can't be denied. You can go on it, but it's just that it was meant to be a stopgap and not have. There's way too many people on it right now because people just aren't being able to get insured. So in response to that, the California Department of Insurance widened the guidelines that they can use in these hazard zones for underwriting of these policies to try and bring back State Farm and farmers, because State Farm had left as of last year writing new policies, but I think they're coming back now and they are writing policies. It's just at an exorbitant rate, you know. So there are some ways to get insurance discounts out there as well. I can send information on that as well. So Ventura County Fire Department is one of 50 agencies in the state of California. We're recognized as a community risk reduction department. So in order to get that recognition, they look at our public education outreach, or what we're enforcing right now with our weed abatement programs, and how extensive they are. They look at our fire prevention bureau, our metrics, and all this other stuff. So we have on our website, there's like a news release letterhead that you can forward to your insurance broker, and they should be giving you should get a somewhat of a rate reduction. I don't know how big it is, 1% or something, who knows. And then also there's been a really huge push for communities to try and get Firewise recognized. So that's where the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council comes into play. They're a great partner of ours in getting these started. These are grassroots programs where local, members of the community come together. They partner with us. We look at the whole community as a whole, come up with a 3-year plan, of things they can do to proactively reduce their fire exposure or fire risk. And they have to hold a couple of community outreach meetings. There's some things you got to do. It's a bit of a process, but if you make it through that process and you get recognized, then insurance companies are supposed to give you a discount for that as well. So as well as home hardening things. So if you do the 1/8-inch steel mesh on your vents and you upgrade your roof or other things, let your insurance company know you've done that, and they're supposed to give you reductions for that as well.
Well, thank you. Another comment of, understanding the 100-foot clearance, but just that seems like a really tall order for some people. Um, have you seen a lot of problems trying to get people to follow 100-foot clearance?
Well, so 100-foot clearance, it is traditionally people they're not thinking of their yard that they spent their whole lives landscaping and making beautiful and making their own, right? So it's traditionally been everything beyond your yard. So on the other side of your fence, right? The native grass, the brush, all that kind of stuff, which is within 100 feet. So we're looking at that a little bit, but we're waiting for the state to provide guidance on what that looks like exactly. So we've kind of been hands off as far as what you got going on in your yard, unless it's you know, you got some big massive bush under a deck, you know, a second story deck or something that's like just screams, hey, that's going to be a problem if it catches on fire. So we're waiting for that additional guidance to come out, and then we'll know the rules of engagement. We'll educate folks on that. You know, our big thing is we want to educate first before we go in heavy-handed and just do enforcement, right? So um, we will be promoting all of that stuff and giving people enough time to get ahead of it. But I would encourage everyone to find our webpage, visit it once a month, you know, and because like I said, we're as new changes and things come out, we're going to put it on our website, put it on our social media, and we're going to try and get the word out as best we can.
Thanks. Another question, which maybe will be connected to the previous question of you're waiting for more guidance from the state, but they're asking, can you define clearance? Is this hardscape or specific height of a tree shrub within 100-foot zone?
So right now, what we typically enforce is all grass and weeds need to be cut to 3-inch stubble. All trees need to be, the branches need to be trimmed back off the roof and eaves by 3 feet minimum. Any tree branches within 10 feet of a chimney or stovepipe need to be cut back to that 10-foot minimum. And as far as roadways go, driveways and roadways, we want 10-foot clearance on both sides off private driveways or roadways. And then also the vertical clearance, so we can get our fire engines through there. We want 13 feet, 6 inches of vertical clearance, so that we can actually get the rigs through. Those are our basic requirements. If you have, obviously, if you have dead vegetation in your yard, we want that removed. If you have trees that have dead branches and things like that, we want the dead branches removed. If there's people out there that have like Italian cypress right up against the house, those people we typically work with on a one-on-one basis, and we try to get them to remove those proactively, because they've just been shown that, you know, they catch embers and they can burn houses down. But we haven't gotten to the point where if somebody's not removing those, that we remove them and bill them. Typically, we're staying out of people's yards for the most part, unless the place is abandoned and the place is totally unkempt. Then we'll go in and clean the yard out and everything. Does that kind of answer the question?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Another question. Oh, two just came in. Someone is asking, are you rewriting standard 515 or is it being enforced as is?
Standard 515 was just updated in April 1st. That's when we went more restrictive. So there's a lot of confusion with standard 515. People think it applies across the board to new and existing. You have to, we put in some clarifying language. The chapters are very specific. There's chapters on new construction, meaning being built brand new right now, and there's chapters on existing, you know, buildings and existing landscape. And basically what I just went over on the last question is what we apply in those existing arenas. In the new stuff, it's kind of easy. In all those cases, a new house that's been approved and they're occupying now, we've already approved their landscaping and inspected it, so they just need to maintain it. It's to that zone 0 requirement already, so those are easy. It's the existing world that there's a lot of, you know, question regarding what's required, and that's where we're waiting for the state to weigh in and provide that additional guidance on what exactly are we looking at in these yards at this point and what's enforceable.
Cool. Another question came in asking, can you provide an update to the CalFire plan to remove thousands of acres of wild chaparral outside of the WUI? This seems counterproductive and detrimental to ecosystems and increased temperatures in a changing climate. And they're just kind of wondering what science goes into CalFire plans.
I don't know that plan specifically. CalFire in general and all of the associated departments up and down the state have vegetation management projects that they typically try to do in the winter and in the less dangerous part of fire season. So over the last couple months, they've stopped doing that for the most part because we're starting to get into the busier part of the season. But so vegetation management projects typically are beyond the 100-foot area, right? It's like the 200 to 300-foot area right outside the buffer area around communities, existing tracks and things like that. That's where we'll try to go in, and usually we won't burn in those areas where we have homes. It's we'll do that more in the rural areas around orchards and things like that to create more of a buffer zone around those to protect those in the coming fire season. In the other areas where we have a lot of homes and things like that, they'll do other vegetation management things. They'll do goats. We'll widen fire breaks with our dozers. We'll go in there with our hand crews and we'll do hand work to thin out some of the vegetation and prep it in a sense for the upcoming fire. So if we do have a fire that runs through that area, it's going to slow down once it hits that area where we did that vegetation management, and we'll be able to get in there and put the fire out before it impacts the community. That's a very long process. There's CEQA, there's you have to get with air quality control anytime you're burning and doing any of that stuff. So it's a very long and drawn out process. There isn't any plan to massively do that up and down the state. They're very strategic where they do it. They're trying to protect communities, so it's just outside those zones, and they're constantly looking for ways to do that as a mitigation measure.
Oh, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? You don't have to use the chat. You can unmute yourself or raise your hand. No. All right, another one. Okay. Ventura County Fire Department rocks. Thanks for all that you do for us. And 100 feet clearance is so important, and we always do so much more. What clearance is done on public roads side so that evacuations are as safe as possible, especially on the mountain and canyon roads?
So county roads, there's only a few county roads where the county actually comes in and does some clearance now and then, and that's only due to it's heavily trafficked and it's dangerous for homeowners to get out there and do it themselves. So we're talking Box Canyon Road, that's in Simi, Simi to Chatsworth, Box Canyon Road, Deer Creek Road out there in Malibu, and Black Canyon Road in Simi. There's only a few. So the way the ordinance is written, if you front a public or a county road, your property fronts that road, that homeowner is responsible for that frontage portion that goes up to the road. The county only maintains the paved surface. They're not responsible for the vegetation along the roadway. So we do get a lot of questions on that, and there is a legal stature that backs that up, but that actual homeowner should be doing that vegetation clearance along there.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? Yeah. Linda, do you have a question? Nope, that was an accident.
I have a question.
Yeah, Lynn.
There's a large hill. I live in Ojai, Miramani area. There's a large hill that hasn't been cleared for probably 10, 15 years. And I'm at the bottom of the hill. The only other house is on the other street on the other side of the hill. So it hasn't been cleared because it had, you know, there's no houses up there, but it's full of dead trees and the grass, the wild stuff is never trimmed. So I'm always concerned about that because if a fire catches on the other side of the hill, it's just going to come up and then come down into my yard. And I was wondering if there's any way I can report that and get it cleared by the fire department.
Yeah, so we can only enforce what's within 100 feet of structures. So if you're
Right,
at the bottom of the hill, we're gonna measure off the backside of your house 100 feet, and that's all we can make them clear. So if your property, if your
right,
structure is 50 feet from your fence, then we can enforce the other 50 beyond your fence, but that's it. We can't go all the way up
right.
the hill. So you're saying
And
it's
I,
within 100 and it's not being cleared.
no, it's just that it's at the top of the hill. It's not my property, but it does belong to somebody, but he doesn't clear it. So it's a huge fire hazard back there,
Mhm.
and it affects my whole block
But is
along
it
with,
more than 100 feet from your house, do you think, or
yes,
you
it's
need
more
some?
than 100 feet from all the houses. So
Okay,
I
so
know
we,
you guys can't clear it, but is there any way the fire department could go in and clear that area because it's just a wild area full of dead trees and, you know, and grasses and stuff. It's a huge hill.
no, we don't. I mean, we'd have to go find the property owner, get permission, go out there. We don't, there's no science that backs that up. That's what we're saying. The 100 foot has been proven to be sufficient for radiant heat. So after that,
Okay.
how do we protect the homes? It's incumbent upon the homeowner to um start looking at their yard, and this is what we're talking about, what's probably going to come down the pipeline in the next 2 to 3 years, where zone 0 is going to be implemented on all you folks that have existing homes in the high and the very high fire severity zone. So what I was talking about, that 5 foot perimeter around your house,
Right.
you're going to have to do that at some point to some extent. We're not sure what the state's going to do. Like I said, we went to a completely non-combustible zone for new houses being built, meaning no wood chips, no vegetation, nothing. So you can have dirt, you can put concrete all around there, you can do decomposed granite, rock, but there's nothing. And then from 6 feet out to 30 feet, then you can have individual plants no more than 4 feet high, but then spaced by another 4 feet. So reducing the fuel load, dropping the flame lengths and the heat as it approaches your house. That's the only other proven way to protect your home rather than extending clearance beyond 100 feet. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
So I'm unfortunately, I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but that's that's kind of where the science and where the thinking's going.
Right.
I have another question. They're asking if there's a list of landscape desirable plants you can recommend. Or on the flip side, what 3 to 5 trees would you suggest are an absolute must to remove? Like these are a hazard you've seen. And then they're sharing some things they've observed. The palm tree here and the Eaton fire. Those were like matchsticks, throwing up a lot of embers, but oddly, many eucalyptus didn't seem to burn, even in close proximity to houses that were destroyed. And so I just want to know, in your expert opinion, what are like the worst offenders?
So the first part of your question, yes, we do have a plant list guide on our website. So go to vcfd.org, go to the fire prevention tab at the top right, and or yeah, no, that'll be the best way. And go to our community wildfire preparedness page, and you'll find it within that page. There's a list of suggested plant guide and then a prohibited list. As far as trees, you don't want Italian cypress or any kind of juniper within 30 feet of your house. You don't want palm trees within 30 feet of your house. Both of those, the reason why is both of them are really receptive to embers. So the Italian cypress, if you ever open an Italian cypress and look inside, it's all dry and dead on the inside for the most part. The outside is green, so the embers get in there, and those things go up like a Roman candle, and they're very dirty, so they're dropping all kinds of debris. So you imagine if the wind's blowing, it's going to blow that stuff everywhere. The palm trees are the same. The problem is once they get to a certain height, people don't maintain them anymore because it's expensive and they got to get a tree company out there. So the date palms get those, we call them beards. All the dead palm fronds die over the years as the tree grows, and they just lay down on the side, and it looks like a big gray beard. They get into that, and they same thing. They burn really quick. It goes up to the top. They drop giant chunks of palm fronds. Those get in the wind, or they drop right on your house because usually people want them in close proximity to their house, or they drop into their planter beds with the wood chips, and that's how the house gets going. Same thing. None of the palms are that great. The queen palms have that little bulb right below the fronds. It's like it looks like a bird's nest, kind of has real fibrous material in there. Same thing. The embers. So your standard tree, take like an oak tree or something else. If an ember falls on it in the canopy and the leaves, it's just going to fall to the ground. It doesn't have anything to stick to or get stuck in, right? So that's where the junipers, the Italian cypress, and the palms have areas where the embers get stuck in there and then they start to burn, right? And so if there's dead and dying material there, that's going to help fan the flames, get the flames bigger, and then fully engulf the tree. So that's kind of what we look at, and how and then, the oil content of the tree, this and that. There's all kinds of things to look at, but those 3 types of trees I wouldn't put anywhere near my house if you're in one of these zones.
My neighbor has a palm tree right on near the property line, and I'm considering being like, if I pay half, will you be okay with getting rid of it? Definitely something to pay attention to. It's 6:55. I want to make sure that Mike can go get his dinner. But any last questions we can have one last question if anyone has anything they're just dying to ask. Okay, we all want Mike to be able to go have dinner. That sounds good.
So just to close out, the question, though, I think it was Lynn asked about the brush up on the hill or whatever. That's the biggest takeaway, or things we want people to start looking at. They need to adjust their mindset as far as what defensible space is. We need to start focusing in on, take a look at your yard. What do I have growing right in close proximity to my house, in the first 5 feet, in the first 10 feet? If you have wood chips, that's easy. Rake those out. You can have wood chips beyond 5 feet. So at the 6-foot mark, just spread them out. We just don't want them right up against the house. So if you have them around your house, that's an easy fix. Just rake them out, put them somewhere else, right? And then if you have vegetation around your home in that 5-foot area, think about this year, maybe thinning that out by 25%, right? At least you're doing something proactively until we get into the later part of this year and we hopefully get some more guidance from the Board of Forestry. But it's already proven that that's kind of the way to go. And we know the Board of Forestry is going that direction. We just don't know to what extent. So get ahead of it, start doing stuff proactively, get on our website, check out what we have on our website, go on Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council's website. They have an awesome website. Tons of good information on there. Start educating yourself and preparing.
Thank you, Mike, so much for taking the time to answer our questions and kind of get into the nuances of the maps. Very useful and very informative. So
yes.
Thank you so much. And
one last thing to close. If you have any questions, it's probably the easiest email address to remember it's fire hazard reduction, but FHRP. So FHRP@ventura.org. If you have any more questions or concerns, email that email. I monitor that with a couple other fire inspectors, and we'll get back to you and address your concerns or answer your questions.
That was FHRP.
Yes, Fire FH Hazard R Reduction P Program, FHRP.
Okay.
at
I put it in the chat,
ventura.org.
so just checking
Okay,
I didn't
cool.
spell it wrong.
Thanks,
Cool,
guys.
okay. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. A recording will be made available sometime next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi. Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye.
Let's go.